How much does speed matter? It certainly means something to scouts because every single position, even interior offensive linemen and kickers, run the 40-yard dash at the combine. Or maybe they just like torturing these poor big dudes. Speed is one of those traits where when you watch a dude run in a straight line, it's hard to tell just how fast he is. For a little perspective, here's Rich Eisen with an 8-yard head start over Denzel Ward, who dropped a 4.32 at the 2018 Combine. And here's Eisen head-to-head with Vita Vea, a 340-pound man who dropped a 5.1. Since the NFL Combine began, 16 players have clocked a blistering 4.2. It just feels like a matter of time until we see the first official 4.1 at the NFL Combine. I've made a couple videos in the past related to the fastest players in NFL history, but this one is a bit different. In this video, we will look at the fastest players by position from the NFL Combine, which means I'm not going to count the times from pro days or other events. So, Bo Jackson's alleged 4.1 doesn't count, and Darrell Green's alleged 4.0 also doesn't count. Let's start with quarterbacks. At the top, Michael Vick is the only quarterback to have ever run a 4.3 at the Combine. Although this does make you wonder what Lamar Jackson would have posted if he didn't skip the 40. While Vick's college clips were dazzling, there is no footage I could find of the 2001 NFL Combine. Prior to 2004, the Combine was pretty low-key and wasn't televised. But anyways, Vick's speed was one major factor as to why he was such a phenom and went #1 overall. In the history of the NFL to that point, there really hadn't been a prospect with the same level of athleticism in his game. NFL offenses hadn't evolved to the RPO, option-style offense that elusive quarterbacks thrive in today. So, Vick was subject to making things happen out of formations like this and this.
They've run out of it. They wanted to pass out of it, though, today. There goes Vick. Inside the 15, inside the 10, touchdown!
By his second year in the NFL, Vick was a Pro Bowler and MVP candidate. He produced 777 rush yards, the third most ever at the time, and made some huge plays with his elusiveness in their wildcard matchup in a victory at Green Bay. During his time in Atlanta, Vick became a transcendent player. He wasn't the most efficient passer in the world, nor did that team ever make a deep playoff run. But with how he played, Vick became an icon. In 2004, he finished as the runner-up for MVP. In 2006, he became the first quarterback to rush for over 1,000 yards in a season. But this is where everything changed. Vick spent 2 years out of the league serving a prison sentence for running a dogfighting operation. Some thought his career was most likely over during this stretch with just how much time he spent out of the league. But he did return. And again, in 2010, we got to see how fast this dude really was. Overall, Vick played 13 years in the NFL, making 4 Pro Bowls in the process. And while his career had its ups and downs, there was no doubt that his athleticism transferred extremely well. Speed played a huge role in his NFL success and helped make him one of the league's icons. He retired as the all-time leading rusher amongst quarterbacks, which was just surpassed by Lamar Jackson. Also, Vick holds the NFL record for career yards per carry. Running backs. Prior to the 2025 NFL Combine, only 2 running backs have ever dropped a 4.2, Dre Archer and Chris Johnson. Chris Johnson not only holds the fastest 40 at the NFL Combine for running backs, but he also tied the Combine record at the time, which held for nearly a decade. Johnson was initially thought of as a day 2 pick, falling somewhere in the 2nd or 3rd round. However, that incredible 40 boosted his stock to the 1st round and resulted in him getting selected 24th overall by the Titans. It didn't take very long to see how valuable his speed was.
In his helmet, on first down, Chris Johnson up the middle of the burst. Into Rams territory for foot race. Goodbye. He's going to win that one. Chris Johnson.
As a rookie, Chris Johnson was electric, breaking off long runs regularly. He rushed for over 1,200 yards and 9 touchdowns, and achieved Pro Bowl honors. Then, he took things up a notch, as he rushed for over 2,000 yards in year 2. Not only did he become one of the very few players to reach this feat, but he also had over 500 receiving yards, which, combined with the rushing yards, still has Johnson, aka CJ2K, as the all-time single-season record holder for total yards from scrimmage. It's one of the greatest seasons we've ever witnessed. Overall, Johnson strung together 6 straight 1,000-yard seasons to begin his career, and retired a 3-time Pro Bowler and 1-time Offensive Player of the Year. Throughout his career, long breakaway touchdown runs remained a constant in his game. Although he possessed many traits that made him elite in his prime, there's no doubt how valuable that 4.2 speed turned out to be in the NFL. Receivers. Prior to 2025, there's been no position that's dropped more 4.2s at the combine than receivers. 7 prospects have pulled it off. And back in 2017, John Ross III set the NFL combine record while also pulling a hammy. Then, 7 years later, Xavier Worthy broke that record. Scouts knew Worthy was going to drop a blazing 40 time. However, with his tiny stature, standing at 165 pounds, Worthy wasn't projected to be a first-round pick, probably falling closer to somewhere in the second round. But after dropping that 4.21, the Chiefs traded up with the Bills to acquire Worthy. At the time, fans of other teams were outraged because we all saw what Mahomes did with Tyreek Hill, and the Bills of all teams are the ones that traded this pick. I wonder how that worked out for them.
Worthy, touchdown! Touchdown, Kansas City!
As a rookie, Worthy splashed on the scene early with a 2-touchdown debut, where his speed was immediately on display. For the first half of the regular season, the Chiefs for the most part struggled offensively, and Worthy wasn't getting a huge workload, never catching more than 4 passes in a game for their first 11 games. After that, Worthy saw his role increase down the stretch, becoming more and more a vital piece in the offense, all culminating in that 6-catch, 85-yard, and 1-touchdown performance in the AFC Championship versus the Bills. And then, his best performance of the season happened in the Super Bowl when Worthy caught 8 catches for 157 yards and 2 touchdowns. He was about the only Chiefs player who did anything positive that game. In fact, he set the all-time rookie record for receiving yards in the Super Bowl. Interestingly enough, outside of a handful of explosive plays, Worthy didn't catch many deep bombs as a rookie, only producing 4 catches over 30 yards. Perhaps this was due to defenses paying respect to his speed all season. Overall, things are still early on in Worthy's career, but considering where he was drafted and what we've seen so far, he has a real chance to be a star, and his speed will certainly play a factor. Tight ends. In NFL Combine history, just 6 tight ends ever have ran sub 4.5, and only one has broken 4.4. That would be the athletic freak, Vernon Davis. This dude's combine performance was the stuff of legend.
So once upon a time, you were the ultimate workout warrior at the combine.
You were an athletic specimen.
Not only does he hold the fastest 40 ever by a tight end with a 4.38, he also set records in the vertical jump, broad jump, and bench press. Even though these other marks have been surpassed, this shows just how much of a beast this dude was coming out of college. Honestly, dropping a 4.3 at 254 pounds is more impressive than any of the 4.2s so far. And this all was added to the fact that he was one of the most productive tight ends in the country, earning first-team All-American honors his final year at Maryland. Very rarely do tight ends go in the top 10, but for obvious reasons, Vernon Davis was selected 6th overall by the 49ers. At first, things got off to a bit of a slow start due to injuries and poor performance. The most famous moment during his first few seasons was actually when he was mentioned in a rant by his head coach Mike Singletary in his 3rd year.
Vernon just, it was something that I told everybody at the very beginning of the week. I will not tolerate players that think it's about them when it's about the team. Cannot play with them, cannot win with them, cannot coach with them, can't do it. I want winners. I want people that want to win.
This moment, along with other conversations he had with his coach, had a huge impact in Vernon's career.
What did Coach Singletary say to you in that conversation Monday morning?
Son, you have to change. You could do better. What you did out there, we can't have that on this team, son. I know what you can be. You can be great. You can be the best tight end in the NFL. But you gotta change. And from that moment, I started crying. I shook his hand. I said, okay, coach, I got you.
They're from 3rd and 3. He's throws to the end zone, and a catch is made by Vernon Davis for a Niners touchdown.
His career took off in year 4, with a massive uptick in production, including finishing tied for a league-leading 13 receiving touchdowns. For the next 5 years, Davis played a massive role in the 49ers' offensive success, including his dominant performances in the 2011 and 2012 playoffs that helped them reach the Super Bowl. For tight ends, there's a whole lot more things that matter in your game than simply speed. However, it was clear that Vernon's speed was extremely beneficial in certain situations, like how he was able to burn DBs on deep routes from time to time. It's pretty incredible to watch a man of his size outrun DBs to the end zone. Overall, Vernon Davis began as a disappointment, but slowly developed into the tight end everyone thought he could be. He played 14 years in the NFL, became a 2-time Pro Bowler, and played in 2 Super Bowls, winning one with the Broncos. Currently, he's 12th all-time in career receiving yards for tight ends. O-linemen. Offensive line prospects are the biggest and slowest of all the non-kickers and punters at the combine, which makes sense. All-out 40-yard sprinting speed plays very little role in what they do, which makes you wonder what's the point of them doing this drill anyway. And well, who knows? Maybe teams just want to see if anyone's got that Larry Allen chase down speed. In NFL Combine history, there's only been 16 offensive line prospects that have gone sub 4.9, and just 2 have gone sub 4.8. with Teron Armstead beating out Lane Johnson by a whisker. Armstead dropped a 4.71, which, considering he's 6'5" and over 300 pounds, it's not only impressive, it's terrifying. Trigger warning, for anyone who's claimed to have run a 4.4 in high school via your coach's stopwatch, you're most likely not as fast as you think you were. Just know that due to hand time error, you're supposed to add 0.24 to your time, which makes you probably closer to a high 4.6 or 4.7. In other words, Armstead's laser-timed 4.7 would have been around your typical hand-timed 4.4.
So how do you, what is it about
I'm a dog.
Yeah, you are.
Anyways, Armstead's speed probably didn't play a huge role in him getting drafted, but he did become the earliest player ever to be selected from Arkansas Pine Bluff, going in the 3rd round of the 2013 NFL Draft to play tackle for the Saints. For the most part, Armstead has exceeded expectations. He became the team's long-term solution at left tackle, and he's now in Miami where he's still playing at a high level. He's made 5 Pro Bowls in his career, and while he hasn't done anything crazy like a Larry Allen chase down tackle, he did credit his speed to helping him become a great pro.
So I had to use my strengths, my speed, athleticism, and my hands. I got some really strong hands, so being able to just jump out on guys, jump sets and all those things, watching Jason Peters do it for so long, and just really mimicking him and taking his style of play, and I felt like it worked well for me.
Yeah.
Interior D-lineman. Defensive tackle is the next slowest position in the NFL, non-kickers or punters, with just 9 prospects running a sub 4.8 and just 3 players running sub 4.7. But at the top, this guy,
Adetomiwa Adebawore,
is the fastest defensive tackle prospect by a mile. Usually, the most disparity between the first and second fastest player at each position is a few hundredths of a second. But this guy has almost 0.2 of a second on the next closest prospect. Well, to be fair, this disparity is due to the fact that he is noticeably smaller than the average D tackle. In fact, the 3 fastest 40s ran by D tackles were all done by guys under 290 pounds. And this dude lined up at edge from time to time in college, so there is sort of an asterisk by his name. Still, with that said, running a 4.4 at 280 pounds is otherworldly. In fact, it's the fastest ever by a player over 280 at the combine. This is in part what made him such an intriguing prospect, or as Sports Nation put it, the most unique D-line prospect in the 2023 NFL Draft. As a player, he was seen as a mid-round prospect, and didn't necessarily project any higher after his epic 40 time. After getting selected in the 4th round, he has been a backup for the Colts for 2 years and hasn't made much impact on the field. He gets in from time to time and averages a tackle once every 2 to 3 games. Also, I will just say this, Aaron Donald has one of the fastest times ever by a defensive tackle, and he's probably the greatest defensive tackle of all time. Defensive end or edge. The defensive end, or edge defender, has developed into one of the freakiest positions in the NFL in terms of physical capabilities. Since 2008, 11 defensive end prospects have registered a sub 4.5 40, and 2 players have dropped a 4.3. According to NFL.com, the fastest defensive end in NFL Combine history is Amari Barno, who, listed at 6'6" and 245 pounds, dropped a nasty 4.36 in 2022. Amari Barno was considered a physical specimen at Virginia Tech, but wasn't highly sought after as a prospect. Quote, Barno's long legs make him a long and clunky strider, making it difficult for him to get low and bend around the edge. So, while Barno's speed was ridiculous, many scouts were concerned about the lack of more critical traits needed to play the position in the pros. Barno ended up getting selected in the 6th round by the Panthers, and in 3 seasons, he's been a backup that shifted to outside linebacker in a 3-4 scheme. Linebackers. Like defensive end, linebackers have evolved from big hulking run stoppers back in the day to smaller, speedier players who can run sideline to sideline to cover the pass. This has resulted in the explosion of sub 4.5 40s and 3 prospects who dropped 4.3s, with the fastest being Shaquem Griffin. Interestingly, Griffin's record for fastest 40 ever by a linebacker at the Combine wasn't what people talked about when he was brought up. It was the fact that he only had one hand, a much more rare phenomenon. Griffin was a dominant college player despite only having one hand. Also, he has a twin brother who was also a beast at UCF and was drafted into the NFL. I found Shaquem so interesting that I made a video about him years back. Focusing on his speed, Griffin's 4.38 was the exact same time as his brother, the difference being that Shaquem was 30 pounds heavier. But compared to the average linebacker, Shaquem was undersized. He ended up getting selected in the 5th round by the Seahawks, who had drafted his brother the year before. And while he got in from time to time, Shaquem ultimately spent 3 years as a backup linebacker and special teamer. Cornerbacks. In terms of speed at the top of the spectrum, cornerbacks are the 2nd fastest position in the NFL, just barely trailing receivers. And from an athleticism perspective, it's the toughest position to play in the NFL. Prior to the 2025 Combine, 6 prospects have dropped a 4.2, all of which have happened since 2017. The fastest one is a 4.23 clocked in 2022 by Kalon Barnes. Now, as a prospect, Barnes was not highly sought after. There were questions as to whether or not he was even going to be drafted, and perhaps due to his ridiculous speed, he managed to get selected by the Panthers in the 7th round of the 2022 NFL Draft, but he was cut before the regular season. Barnes bounced around practice squads and was elevated to the Vikings game day roster for 2 games in 2022. And since then, he's been a practice squad player. As of December 2024, he signed to play in the United Football League. And as for the rest of those corners who dropped 4.2s at the Combine, about half of them developed into successful starters in the NFL. Safeties. Safeties tend to be the defensive backs who weren't fast enough to play corner, but there is still some dudes who are insanely fast. 12 prospects have dropped a sub 4.4 at the Combine, and just 1 prospect snuck his way into dropping a sub 4.3, Zedrick Woods. But that was the peak of his pro journey. He went undrafted and never made a final roster. The 2 players tied for 2nd, Nick Cross and Troy Apke, have had much more success in the NFL. I find it hilarious how Troy Apke is the opposite of every white guy stereotype. Not only is he the only white skill position player even close to the fastest at his position, but also his Combine performance scored him a 99 athleticism grade back in 2018. This ranked him as the most athletic safety in the class. However, his production score in college was below average, which heavily impacted him as a prospect and had him projected as a practice squad player. He did prove that projection wrong though, and not only did he end up starting in the NFL, he actually moved a corner in 2021, becoming the first white cornerback to play at the position in 13 years.
What situation you placed him in?
It's Troy Apke.
Oh man, he can run.
Why are you surprised, Dan?
Oh, you know why I'm surprised? I can't say it on TV, but he can run.
Garoppolo from the pocket. Overthrows, and it's intercepted. Troy Apke, who just came in for the injured Monte Nicholson.